All right, here we go. Let's talk about week 14. Who's in the playoffs? Big week in fantasy football, and hopefully it was a great one for all of you. We've got winners and losers, but unfortunately, we have so many injuries. Do people ever talk about the curse of the number one overall pick? Or can we put it out there?
There's a curse about the number one overall, like the Madden curse, but with the number
Madden, it's so much worse. Let me tell you the last 5 number one picks. 2019. Saquon Barkley missed 3 games, was RB10. Came back, had that ankle injury, wasn't so good.
Doesn't sound like a curse.
2020, Christian McCaffrey missed 13 games, was RB54. 2021, Christian McCaffrey missed 10 games, was RB39. 2022, Jonathan Taylor missed 6 games, was RB31. 2023, Justin Jefferson, another injury, probably won't even be a top 40 wide receiver. Curse of the number one overall pick. It's worse than the Madden curse, folks.
So we're starting off on a bright note tonight.
Who's the biggest winner? No, that just sucks, man. You waited all this time for Justin Jefferson to come back. And if you're ready, I don't know the severity of the injury. He's having x-rays. But if you were ready to get in the playoffs and be like, yes, I'm going to turn Justin Jefferson loose, I'm very sorry that's not going to happen. Really tough year for all the Jefferson managers. But all right, Heath, let's keep it happy here. Who's the biggest winner in fantasy week 14?
Well, I sent in the winner as I always do early because, you like to get your stuff in early. And I said James Cook. And I still think he was, because since they've made the change at offensive coordinator, James Cook has been a 100-yard machine. And he should have been even better in this game than he was. I thought the Bills should have given him the ball more in the fourth quarter. But he was spectacular. 121 total yards and a score, caught 5 passes. This guy has kind of bounced around that RB2 to RB3 range. And I think you can enter the fantasy playoffs with the confidence that the Bills know that they need to get him the ball and that he will be a starter for your fantasy team.
We've now got him with over 15 PPR points, 3 straight weeks. That coincides with the change in play caller. The Bills take on the Cowboys next week. It's a tough matchup. Maybe if the Cowboys win a close, emotional, high-scoring game on Sunday, then they'll be ripe for the picking against Buffalo. Who knows? But they get the Chargers after that and the Patriots after that. Patriots' run defense is pretty good. I tend to agree that Cook is a winner in that he's a must-start. I'll tell you what I didn't like, Heath. He played 45% of the snaps.
I don't know what happened because he was their best offensive player in the first 3 quarters.
I agree. So I don't know what's going on there either, but Latavius played 32%. Latavius continues to dominate on third downs. Ty Johnson isn't, but Ty Johnson, I think he was like on the cliff of being out of the league. And now here he is taking 20% of the running back snaps for Buffalo. I wish Cook would just give him all that. Yeah. Make him a 60% snap guy. Give him the work. At least he's getting you the fantasy production. That's what we care about the most. You're going to continue to look at Cook as a must start.
Sometimes it's really not that complicated. And we have a bunch of advanced stats and a bunch of rate stats, and those are really good. But sometimes you can just be really simple with it. You handed the ball off to James Cook 10 times, and you got 58 yards. You handed the ball off to Ty Johnson and Latavius Murray 8 times, and you got 28 yards. You threw it to James Cook 5 times, and you got 83 yards. You threw it to the other guys 3 times, and you got 21 yards. I think you should give the ball to James Cook just a little bit more.
More to James Cook, less to Stephon Diggs.
Well, I'm telling you, you got like Snead is an all pro. He is all pro. It's every week. And I don't think he fully shadowed him, but he was on him a lot. And 11 targets for Diggs. We got to buy or sell on Diggs a little bit later, but L'Jarius Snead has been my favorite defensive player of the year. I just love it. All right. So James Cook was started in 44% of leagues. We're at actually the point in the season where I don't really look at the start percentage, especially going forward. I don't really look at the start percentage as being too reliable, but a lot of people just haven't just not setting their lineups, whatever. And that's of course going to be the case with teams being eliminated.
Good job, Adam. You helped Pia out.
Thanks. Isaiah Likely taking advantage of the Rams matchup. We'll talk about that a little bit. All right. Dave, who's your biggest winner?
Well, I mean, we could talk about Lamar Jackson or Evan Ingram, but I think people know what to do with those guys. Matthew Stafford, to me, is just a humongous winner. Weather, rainy. Matchup, tough. Receivers, not at 100%. Run game for the Rams continues to be great, and Stafford still puts up huge numbers. And he came out of this game tough matchup against the Ravens, 3 touchdowns, almost 300 yards, just an outstanding game. And do you know who he plays next? He's got the Commanders, and then he's got the Saints, and then he's got the Giants. And other quarterbacks are falling by the wayside. We're not going to have CJ Stroud next week, probably. We might not have Justin Herbert the rest of the year, maybe. Yeah. Matthew Stafford's going to end up being a top 12 fantasy quarterback next week, and maybe every week the rest of the way. Great job if you've got Stafford on your team.
Mm-hmm. And over the last 2 weeks, he has scored the 3rd most fantasy points of any quarterback against the Browns and the most fantasy points this season of any quarterback against the Ravens. Let's go to the biggest loser here. And Dave, I'll throw it to you. Who's our biggest loser from week 14?
I've got to go with Calvin Ridley. I know that it was a really tough situation, and we kind of talked about it leading up to the game, and we know that he's been playing well, but now we're right back in the exact same boat we were in with Calvin Ridley before he started to spout off against soft defenses. It was a tough matchup, and his quarterback was banged up, and Calvin Ridley still just could not even get 10 PPR points. I think fantasy managers are going to be frustrated with him. They're not going to know what to do with him. They've got who do they have next week? Baltimore. Yeah, that's going to be rough. I know what the Rams just did. I don't know if I can look at Calvin Ridley and say, okay, without Christian Kirk to take some coverage away and against aggressive defenses that are going to put pressure on your quarterback, there could be some trouble here. And listen, for the Jaguars part, they tried to get him the football. I don't know how many targets he had.
13.
13?
On 50 pass attempts.
10 PPR. Really rough game for Calvin Ridley, but that's where the losers start this week. There's a lot of them.
It was the first time that I saw Trevor Lawrence show visible frustration with Ridley. There were a couple of times where Ridley was not even looking for the ball when Lawrence threw it to him. So that connection is like devolving, I think.
Well, he threw an interception on a route that Ridley, I don't know if Ridley got it wrong, but Lawrence was really mad. And Ridley also had an almost touchdown. He caught a ball at the 1 yard line for the 2nd straight week. He nearly got in the end zone, but
I think he leads the NFL in almost touchdowns.
Yeah, he's had a lot of them, no doubt. Who's your biggest loser, Heath?
It's got to be the Texans. Nico stepping into that surefire wide receiver 1 role hurts his calf. We got CJ Stroud with what looked like a pretty bad head bang on the turf concussion situation. Dave said it. It's not there have been more guys lately who have come back within less than a week from a concussion, but I think the expectation should still be that he misses next week against the Titans, and then you've got the Browns. And so really, if you had any Texans and you were hoping to start them in the fantasy playoffs, you're looking towards week 15 and having to make other plans.
Okay. Maybe Singletary, though?
Not if it's Davis Mills. Again, no.
Yeah, no, you're right. Against the Titans, no. All right, check out Sportsline, everybody. We've got great content on Sportsline from all of our writers. Got gambling content on Sportsline. And you can get the first month for $1 with the code Richard or the code Heath. Or how about just get that 60% off the quarterly plan with the promo code EKWins. EKWins. Promo code. Yeah.
It's a little bit of a bridge too far, isn't it?
Why?
For you to use a picture of someone else and somebody else's name in the promo code that you're using to make money?
That's him.
I know, but I'm pretty sure you get credit for any promo code EK wins that goes into the system.
I do?
I just assume if you give one that's not me or Dave, it's yours.
It doesn't even matter.
And you're just using EK.
I don't know about you. There's no benefit as far as I know. Should I be going to management and saying,
you think that
commission to?
This is the first time I have seen the graphic. I had no idea. I do not.
60% off is a fantastic deal.
EK wins. All right. News and notes. Justin Jefferson left with a chest or rib injury, and we'll obviously keep you posted. Justin Herbert has a fractured finger, and obviously that could be a multi-week absence and maybe the end of the fantasy season for Justin Herbert. CJ Stroud, concussion. Nico Collins, calf injury. Josh Jacobs left with a knee injury. This was terrible this week.
Yeah.
Josh Jacobs left with a knee injury.
Worse than normal.
They get the Chargers next week. And would you have any interest in Zamir White or Amir Abdullah if Jacobs were out?
Yes.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have high expectations for either one.
Yeah.
Although they do play the Chargers.
Right, but it wouldn't be like Zeke.
LA.
No, it'd be more like Clyde.
Okay. Alexander Madison left with an ankle injury, and he absolutely dominated carries in the first half. Only 3 carries in the first half, I believe, for Ty Chandler. But you could look at Chandler. They have a very favorable matchup next week at Cincinnati. Joe Flacco is Cleveland's starter rest of season. How about, what is it about Flacco that these teams just let him throw the ball 44 times a game? 44 and 45 pass attempts in 2 games.
I would like to believe that they're calling runs and he just constantly checks to passes. That's
the coaches get ticked off at him because he keeps changing out of plays that are supposed to be runs, and then he scores, and they're like, "Oh, we got to just keep letting him do his thing."
Jerome Ford.
I don't care about your play calls.
Jerome Ford. I'm not sure if you guys saw that, but he went to the locker. He went to the X-ray room. I saw. So that was one I did. All I saw was a Jerome Ford walk to the X-ray room tweet,
right.
But I don't know what the deal is there. So we'll see about Jerome Ford. Tutu Atwell was evaluated for a concussion. Dalton Kincaid left with a shoulder injury, but he was listed as probable to return, and I think they just took a knee after that.
Sure. Hey, with all these injuries, the people that got eliminated from the playoffs are like, well, thank goodness I'm done with fantasy for the year. I don't have to deal with, 2 or 3 players on my team that got hurt in week 14.
No, they definitely want to listen to us for 4 more weeks.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
No, people listen during the offseason. It's one of the secrets to winning. We talk about it all the time.
Here's the thing about Cleveland, by the way, and their defense, which hasn't been so great. They've been without Denzel Ward. He missed another game today. And Juan Thornhill, starting safety, he was ruled out before the game. So they were depleted defensively. And personally, guys, I didn't think Trevor Lawrence looked injured. He may have been. I mean, I'm sure he was.
Right.
But he
was not, whatever injury he had, he was not feeling it when he ran.
Right.
He was running with a normal gait.
Tore it all.
Tampa Bay had 2 defensive backs leave with injury. So they face Green Bay next week. Ryan Neal and Carlton Davis left with injuries.
They were already without Jamel Dean, who's a starting corner too. And Devin White didn't play.
And Devin White. It's like half their starting defense right now is hurt. Houston. Yeah. Houston also, a cornerback, a linebacker, and an edge rusher, Will Anderson. They all left with injuries, not to mention Nico Collins and CJ Stroud. They get Tennessee next week. Tennessee will not be able to take advantage of those injuries. Baltimore safety Kyle Hamilton left with a knee injury. This could be a really big deal. Jacksonville safety Andre Sisco left with an injury. One of the reasons I was very nervous about DK Metcalf was Charvarius Ward. He left in the first quarter almost immediately, and then Metcalf caught a long touchdown on a different corner and he didn't have a catch the rest of the game. But he had 52 yards and a touchdown, I think. Seattle cornerback Devin Witherspoon left with an injury. Micah Hyde, Buffalo safety, he left with a stinger. And the edge rusher AJ Epinesa left with a ribs injury. So that's not good going into a game against Dallas next week. And the 49ers were really beat up. So not only did they lose Charvarius Ward, but Javon Hargrave, defensive tackle, he left with an injury. They were already playing without Eric Armstead. They're at Arizona next week. Early waiver wire. Who headlines the early waiver wire? Injuries in week 14 mean waiver claims in week 15. TM. I mean, is it Zamir White? Is it Ty Chandler?
Those guys will be on there. I wonder if there's going to be more attention for Chase Brown just because he's made some big plays the last couple of weeks for Cincinnati. He's just not playing a ton, and Mixon's doing a good job of keeping him at bay. So shout out to Joe Mixon for doing well. What's Isaiah Likely's rostership? Because everybody that was
62.
People who were a little nervous about picking him back up, they're not going to be nervous anymore. I don't think that there's a play in Houston if Stroud misses a game. I can't imagine there's anybody in Houston's offense that you'd want to go and grab. Jake Browning might be on the list. If you lost Herbert or Stroud, you might look his way. You might look Joe Flacco's way. Flacco's got Chicago next week.
What about
putting in a tough matchup, though, as Jared Goff will tell you.
I think Zay Jones is – I know they're facing Baltimore, so maybe it's not for next week, but he's 33% rostered. He had 14 targets today. He dropped a touchdown. Wasn't an easy catch. And I know it was bad. 5 for 29 on 14 targets is bad, but if you need a wide receiver, a guy who's, I think, the number 2 guy –
you think that he will be picked up over Parker Washington, who scored
back-to-back Washington's going to be the one that people will chase,
so
but he
Washington
didn't have
3 targets.
Right.
So I would pick up Zay Jones. But
so the question is, do you think that's something that Jacksonville changes next week to try to get back on track, is to get Washington going a little bit more? He's their
Maybe.
slot guy. I mean, they play Tampa, and we just talked about how beat up they are.
No,
It might be everybody in that offense.
They play Baltimore next week.
That's what I 2 weeks from now. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, that's an early look at the waiver wire. We're going to take a break. We got buy or sell when we come back on Fantasy Football Today. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today. Time for some buy or sell, as mentioned before the break. This one we kind of talked about. Jake Anderson says, buy or sell, James Cook is a league winner.
Sure, I'll buy it.
I think like semantically we could argue it, but he's a must-start player in the playoffs.
Even against Dallas next week, even against the Patriots in week 17.
No, I wouldn't disagree with the second part. Who does he play in the championship week, though?
That is week 17.
I take it back. I don't think James Cook is a must-win, is a league-winning running back.
All right. Buy or sell from Elijah. Cooper Kupp is Cooper Kupp, and we have nothing to worry about.
He looks like Cooper Kupp of old, and he started to look better last week. Yeah, I do. I think so. I think he looks better.
I thought he did I thought he looked kind of like Travis Kelce.
Well, do you remember what he looked like
Travis Kelce looks
before all the injuries, like at the beginning of this year or maybe even last year?
I don't think he looks quite like that guy, but you're starting him.
That's fine.
But I don't think I'm not sure he's going to be a top 10 wide receiver in the fantasy playoffs. I guess what I'm saying.
Okay. I think he's definitely in like the top 20 range, Heath. And I mean, I remember we were Adam and I especially were talking about him after we watched him 2 games ago. Man, he was terrible. He couldn't separate. He was just so slow. And now he's starting to do a better job of getting away, running downfield more. He had a big catch against Baltimore. Again, he's doing this against Baltimore. Tough matchup. And in the rain, like I'm not sweating Cooper Kupp anymore.
Okay. From Keep Pounding. Buy or sell, I'm bald because of fantasy football.
Bye.
Yeah.
We all go through it, man. We all want to win. We love this game. It's a crazy game. And it drives us nuts when we lose. Right, Adam?
Buy or sell from Monty P. David Montgomery is no longer a must start. He had 10 carries for 66 yards and 3 catches for 19 yards at the Bears. And here come the Broncos in Detroit next week. A huge game, by the way.
Yeah.
But David Montgomery no longer a must start. Buy or sell?
Line him up against James Cook. Who would you rather have next week? Cook against Dallas. I think he'll play more than Montgomery. They gave the ball to Gibbs, man. They gave a lot of snaps to Gibbs. Montgomery played 35% of the snaps. He barely played on third down. They had 1 snap inside the 10. It went to Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, but it was like 8 yards out, right? It was a touchdown.
I wonder how many times, and I'm going to guess very, very few, has an NFL team had multiple running backs with double-digit carries, average at least 6 yards per carry, and lose like they did?
Probably
That's a
more.
great question.
I'm not surprised that Montgomery played 30-something % of the snaps. They got blown out. They were trailing much of the game. I think next week against Denver should be a better spot. But you like Cook. You're saying you like Cook. The next 2 matchups after that are not good for Montgomery. But I don't know. This is the kind of what happens. Montgomery goes out. He scores every single week, and he's a must start. And then he goes out and he doesn't score. And he still had 11.5 PPR fantasy points in this game. Like if this is David Montgomery's bad game and his good game's 20, then he's a must starter. Okay, so you're selling that he's no longer a must start. I don't know if he's a must start or not. I don't want to commit. I think he's going to end up in my top 24 running back pretty comfortably. Next week, I think I had him 23 this week, so yeah, seems close. About right. Pretty close to a must start. Buy or sell, David Njoku is a top 5 tight end rest of season with Flacco. This one's from Mickey. David Njoku, top 5 rest of season. Buy. You wouldn't have bought that last week, though. So we're buying it this week because of busted coverage. I think he's been a top 5 tight end this season with anybody but Deshaun Watson. Like if you just put all the backup quarterbacks together, I'm pretty sure David Njoku is a top 5 tight end. And now we've got Dalton Kincaid's got Dawson Knox back. And plenty of other complications at the position. I like the 8 targets. I think that's a good sign. Not on 45 pass attempts necessarily, but 6 catches, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns. Last week, He had 2 catches for 17 yards on 6 targets.
At what point do you see the Browns becoming completely reliant on the run and Joe Flacco throwing 29 times in a game, assuming there's no like weather issues?
If their defense gets back to being what it is. But here's the question. Can you name 5 tight ends you'd rather have than Njoku?
Yeah, I think I might be able to.
Kelsey,
Laporta, Hawkinson.
McBride.
McBride will be in there.
That's it.
You might say Ferguson. You might say Kittle. We'll see how Goddard does tonight. You might say Goddard.
I think I'd have to take Kittle.
Are we really leaving Dalton Kincaid on the corner and driving away?
Well, I'm not dropping him, but
I think you just compare David Njoku with a backup quarterback versus Dalton Kincaid with Dawson Knox, and it's pretty clear that Njoku's a lot better.
It looks that way. All right, from Keith, buy or sell. Stephon Diggs is not a must-start wide receiver going into the playoffs. Diggs had 4 catches for 24 yards on 11 targets, and that's now fewer than 7 fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games.
Yeah, but look at those games before, and look at the game that he did score more than 7 fantasy points in. It's 19. It's a total conundrum. If you knew that he was going to stink for sure, you'd confidently sit him. That goes without saying, but he's got upside to get you 20 fantasy points in PPR. Now, Dallas next week is going to be tough. I think that's really tough on him.
Is it?
You might be encouraged to start him without reservations if the Eagles receivers have a big game against the Cowboys corners, because that would now mean 2 games in a row that Dallas's secondary is struggling to cover quality receivers, fast receivers, good receivers. And Diggs will be able to be started confidently. Otherwise, you might be a little nervous to go with them.
Heath?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't agree. I don't disagree. I'm just doing Heath there. No, I just think that let's point out who the bad games have been against: the Jets, the Broncos, and the Chiefs. I don't really view the Cowboys that way. I don't think they've showed that against wide receivers, against good wide receivers anyway. But there is something else going on here with Stephon Diggs. I know he got a lot of targets today, but lately, Josh Allen, I think, is just playing more conservatively. And he talked about that when they fired Ken Dorsey, and he said that he had to take what the defense was giving him and don't get bored, basically, is what he said, to take the dump offs. We're seeing it with James Cook having his highest target share. His last 3 games, his 3 highest target shares. So I think it's hurt Diggs a little bit. Like, when was the last time he had a 100-yard game? I think it's been 6 or 7 weeks. So,
So you're going to sit him?
No, of course not.
Okay.
But I think there's some underlying issues there. But I think he'll be much better against the Cowboys and the Chargers. Or is that the matchup after that? Yeah, Chargers, Dallas, and the Chargers the next 2 weeks. All right, and then I had buy or sell. The Kincaid ride is over. Seems like
not over. It's just not as fun. At the end of the ride, they don't have a bunch of like go upside down and go real high and go real fast. You got to slow the train down before it comes back into the station. And so we're just closer to the end of the ride. There might be a couple of little whips that are kind of fun, but it's probably just going to be kind of a dull ride.
Heath likes whips. Good to know. He was second on the Bills in targets with 8. And almost like the exact same situation that Njoku was in, where Njoku had 8 targets in a game where his quarterback threw a lot. Josh Allen threw a lot. Kincaid had 8 targets. He just didn't have a big game. I'm not ready to say it's over for Dalton Kincaid.
Does the ride have like a lap bar that comes all the way down? Is it seatbelt?
100%. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and it's locked. Like, you can't get it up.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, I'll get a little personal there, Heath. Winners and losers. Let's go to Dave's winners. Matthew Stafford was one of them. Isaiah Likely was one of them, and David Njoku was one of them. All right, so Likely is 62% rostered. He was 42% started. We did talk about how the Rams just cannot cover tight ends. The Rams, the Bengals, the Texans, and the
Jaguars.
Broncos.
Jaguars can't cover tight ends. That's who
right.
The Ravens play next.
Okay, well, how do you feel about Likely? I feel like he had another low ADOT game, but he did have the one huge play. I think he had a 54-yard touchdown. So, what do you think?
Yeah, he had 29 yards on his other 6 targets.
Right.
On his other 4 catches? Yeah. So, low receiving average. It's about 7 yards. I don't mind that so much. But we know that he's capable of big plays. This week proved it to us again. and I like that he was third on the team in targets. Lamar threw a ton, 43 times. That's something that might worry me a little bit. Like, you could tell me that Joe Flacco or Josh Allen threw 40 times in a game, and I wouldn't bat an eyelash. I'd expect that. I don't know if I would expect Lamar Jackson to throw this much that often. And he played into OT, so that could be part of it too. But
how excited are you if you just have kind of one of those mid tight ends, but you've locked up a first round bye and Likely's on your waiver wire and they play the 49ers in week 16? How excited are you to add Likely?
Not that excited.
I'm not either.
yeah,
Like,
I would consider.
I want to start him next week for sure.
I'd consider him. I mean, hey, Colby Parkinson had a touchdown against the Niners. It was on a pretty good play design this week.
That was a great play. Yeah,
It was a great play, but I don't know if that's because of a weakness in how they cover tight ends, so to speak.
I think we kind of have to talk about the waiver wire in, are you playing this week or not?
Yeah.
How about this? If it's Lamar against the 49ers in week 16, we could see Lamar throw a lot. Could be back over 35 pass attempts in that game.
Yeah.
That could help, likely.
Okay. Let's see. Njoku we already talked about. Let's go to Heath's winners. James Cook. Deebo Samuel is on another planet. The man is not a human being. He's incredible. He had 7 catches for 149 yards and a touchdown and a rushing touchdown from 1 yard out. That came after he came up a yard short of a receiving touchdown. So that's 3 straight games with 22.4 or more. 2 straight games with 30 or more PPR points for Deebo. And Drake London was another one. But since you talked about Cook, what do you have to say about Deebo Samuel and Drake London, who had 172 yards today? My goodness.
So, somebody had put something in the chat, and I can't find it now, about how we keep trying to give Brandon Ayuk Deebo's cookie or something. And like, I get it. There was a lot of talk about Ayuk as the clear best fantasy wide receiver on this team. And Deebo the last couple of weeks has just reminded us that when they choose to get him the ball in those types of situations, he's one of the best players in football. They have 3 or 4 of those. Yeah. And so I think you just view him as a near top 12 must start wide receiver and know that there still could be a week in the fantasy playoffs. In fact, it's probably likely that one of Kittle or Ayuk or Deebo is going to let us down next week. But you've got to start all 3 and not even think about it.
Absolutely. I feel like they don't have a lot of depth at their skill position players, but all of their skill position players are like the greatest players in the sport. Right? Yeah. They don't have a great number 3 receiver or anything like that, or backup. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like those guys.
I don't think there's a whole lot to say here. He scored at least 20 PPR points in 3 straight. He's putting up points like a quarterback, and you're using him as a wide receiver.
So what about Drake London, Heath? Was this just a matchup thing? We had 300-yard days today from Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, and Desmond Ridder. And Ridder also threw 40 passes, but a beautiful day for London. Started at only 38% of leagues. Beautiful day.
That type of quarterback play is exactly what I was hoping for in the final week of the fantasy regular season. With seasons on the line, let's have some really great passing performances. No, I think if you look at Drake London's stats when he's just played with Desmond Ridder, like there's a pretty special connection there. There's been some bad games, but a lot of that slump was when they tried to go to Taylor Heineke. I'm feeling better about London going into the fantasy playoffs as a number 3 wide receiver after this game.
He's got the
at least a number 3 receiver
against Carolina next week. Carolina, no wide receiver lives to tell about it. That's not true, but.
Was Chris Olave not good today?
Not really.
He was good. He just his quarterback stunk. That wasn't about the Panthers defense as much as it was about Derek Carr. London made some huge grabs in this game. He played like a former top 10 overall.
Every once in a while, he and Garrett Wilson just remind me of how special they are and what could be if they get a full season with good quarterback play.
Yeah.
Like those guys are still, I don't know if it's a DJ Moore situation. I think they might even have a little bit more upside than DJ Moore.
So you're talking about, for example, next year, Garrett Wilson's going to have Aaron Rodgers. Drake London could have a quarterback upgrade. It won't be Ridder. These are going to be guys that you're going to chase. Garrett Wilson, we were taking him round 2. Aaron Rodgers was healthy during draft season.
Yeah. Oh, if Drake London had Garrett Wilson, if Drake London had Aaron Rodgers next year, I'd take him in round 2.
Yeah, of course. So like a good quarterback in Atlanta probably puts Drake London in the round 3 conversation, maybe toward the end. And
But
holy moly, if Aaron Rodgers comes back healthy and the Jets do something at backup quarterback to make you feel pretty good about that spot, yeah, Garrett, we're running right back to Garrett Wilson, arms wide open.
for
Second
for
round.
dynasty purposes, they might be the type of wide receivers that we get to March or April and people are just looking at the stats on Pro Football Reference or wherever, and you're able to turn a first round pick into that kind of guy. And I think both of them are probably better than everybody except for the first 2 or 3 picks in most rookie drafts.
Right. Like I think I'd still rather have Marvin Harrison. It's going to be close between Harrison and Garrett Wilson, though, because I do love Garrett Wilson.
Well, let's talk about our Week 14 losers, and let's bring on. Oh, hey, Jamie.
Hey,
Just kidding. What's
Rude.
That was mean.
Jamie to come on? No, Jamie ended my season of the podcast league. It's all good. Heath's losers. Well, Heath and
Really, you didn't sound like it was all good before the show.
Heath's loser. One of them was Gus Edwards. Dave had the Ravens running backs as losers.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, so we can throw all of them in that loser bin, unless Heath, you don't think that Keaton Mitchell was a loser.
I'm not sure that Keaton Mitchell was a loser. I think Keaton Mitchell stayed pretty much where he was, and Gus lost a little bit. Mitchell was still that boom bust flex, and I still think going into next week or any week, Mitchell's the kind of guy that if you don't have a guy you love in your flex, he could score from anywhere. So I don't mind putting him in my lineup. Gus is really, really struggling with efficiency, and Mitchell's playing better. And so I think he's in danger of losing more and more. And even the goal line thing is a little bit questionable with Justice Hill for some reason.
Well, first of all, they didn't have any snaps inside the 10 against the Rams this week. And Justice Hill played more snaps than Keaton Mitchell and Gus Edwards. He continues to play on third downs, 42% of the snaps. Keaton had 34. Gus 27. It's going to potentially be a 3-way headache the rest of the way. And man, I wanted to see Keaton Mitchell break out, but they came out of the bye and they give Keaton Mitchell that lion's share workload that we were hoping for. And I don't know if that was a byproduct of the rain or circumstance or whatever. Certainly playing from behind toward the end of the game did not help Keaton Mitchell, but tough, man. It was tough to not see Keaton Mitchell play 50% of the snaps at least.
All right. Is anybody here confident at all in starting a Bears running back or a Ravens running back going forward? Because Khalil Herbert is also on Heath's losers list. Jamie, I'll let you get the first word in here. You confident starting a Ravens or Bears running back?
no. I don't know how anybody can. I mean, Lamar Jackson is the best runner for the Ravens. That's easy. And Justin Fields is the best runner for the Bears. That's easy. So, as long as there's not one guy when you're splitting it up 3 ways, it's just tough. Like the Bills, for example, they're splitting it up 3 ways, but James Cook's been awesome. So it's easy to say, okay, there's a clear-cut winner in that backfield. But yeah, I agree with Heath that, in terms of the Ravens, Mitchell is the one you want to lean toward just because of the outside play. And for Chicago, there really isn't anybody that you want to lean on. So no, I would not trust any of those backfields.
I think if you were desperate and you had to pick somebody from Chicago, I don't mind it being Foreman. He played 56% of the snaps. It looks like he's their favorite and preferred guy on running downs, 4 of 6 snaps inside the 10. You're not going to use him next week. But the 2 games after, look at who the Bears play in week 16 and 17.
Who do they play?
Arizona, Atlanta, both at home.
Atlanta, number 1 against running backs.
They weren't this week, and if they don't get healthy, they're going to fall from grace pretty quickly.
They still have not given up a running back rushing touchdown.
No, they gave up a receiving touchdown.
Would you believe that Rachaad White gets down to the 1,
huh?
and then Baker Mayfield pulls an RPO on that, and White could have walked in the end zone. He could have. Untouched, and Baker nearly gets killed on the play, gets a rushing touchdown, and then he throws a touchdown to Rachaad White.
All right, so yeah,
I hope they go the whole year without it.
Another topic, I think a topic for another day, but from Roschon Johnson's dynasty perspective, it's like, what are they waiting for? He comes off his best game, and they go to a guy who's definitely not part of their future, in Deontay Foreman. And Roschon gets 1 touch. So maybe we'll talk about that on Wednesday or something like that.
I don't think their coaching staff is playing for the future. I think their coaching staff is playing for their jobs.
Yeah.
Even still, don't you want to evaluate? Is he going to make that much of a difference? All right, fair enough. He also has the Texans as losers. That makes sense. Dave has Calvin Ridley, the Baltimore running backs. And oh boy, Zach Moss. What the hell, Zach Moss? 13 carries for 28 yards, 4 catches for 28 yards. At Cincinnati, this was supposed to be his bounce back week. Dave Richard wasn't good enough.
Wasn't good enough. He had a touchdown called back, but I'm going to be on repeat from last week. He played 83% of the snaps. He dominated third downs, each of 3 snaps inside the 5-yard line. He gave you what you wanted, 17 total touches in the game, and just could not come through. It hurts even more because he had a touchdown called back by a penalty, and that's annoying.
This is one where some people, it really upsets when fantasy analysts say this, but like, we're going to keep ranking this guy as a must start guy if he's getting 13 to 15 carries and 8 targets in a game. Like, it sucks, but the process is that guys who touch the ball this much, Ezekiel Elliott. Like, do we really think that Zeke is a much better running back than Zach Moss?
Well, what does Zeke and Moss have in common?
Steelers.
Yep.
They are both on the Steelers. Now, Zeke played the Steelers this week, and Zach Moss gets the Steelers in week 15. But listen, that's not like the Steelers are an easy matchup here. I know Zeke, receptioned his way to a great team.
Fair.
But it's not like the Steelers have a bad run defense or anything like that. Now they do have Watt in the concussion protocol and Highsmith out too, and that's just going to hurt them in general. So maybe that changes things, but Zeke didn't run all over the Steelers for what that's worth.
I think for right now, I might rather have Zeke next week against the Chiefs at home than Moss against the Steelers.
I agree with that. Yes, I'm going to rank Zeke way too high next week. Way too high.
We're all good.
Way too high.
Get fooled you by Zeke next week, but yeah,
I don't think so. I think the role in the passing game that's what I was counting on this week. I think that's going to be the case moving forward. I mean,
We have our first ever Sunday night start of the week reveal.
no,
It's
No.
Stafford.
no. It might be Stafford. I've already done my quarterback rankings for next week. It might be Stafford.
There you go. All right, let's we'll go through a few other things here. I don't know if there's anything at the goal line that really stood out to you. Bijan Robinson had a really nice game. Could have had an even better game. Ritter missed him wide open for what should have been like a 2-yard touchdown.
You mean the throw to the left where he was wide open on the left side of the field?
Right side, actually.
Oh, there was one where he was wide open on the left side too. It was the touchdown to London.
Oh, no, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Devin Singletary should have had I can't say it would have been a touchdown. They ran a shovel past him at the 8-yard line. And if he had caught that, I think he had a pretty good chance to score, but he dropped it. And then some almost touchdowns. Joe Mixon had a big game, but he could have had an even bigger one. He really struggled at the goal line. Jake Browning had a QB sneak for a touchdown after that. Calvin Ridley, like I said, he got a yard short of a touchdown. T. Higgins pushed off on a touchdown catch. Cole Kmet dropped a possible touchdown. Mike Evans, terrible game for Mike Evans. He nearly had a touchdown. It still would have been a bad game even with the touchdown, but his hand was out of bounds before his foot came down inbounds. Jerry Jeudy.
You got to just lay out on that one. What are you doing?
Yeah,
Evans sucks.
surprisingly weird form.
Jerry Jeudy, geez. Like in a bad season, this had to be one of his worst games. He dropped a deep ball. It had been like a 50-yard catch or something. He couldn't.
Was that a drop or was it a little bit thrown a little too far away from him?
I thought he should have had it.
Gabe Davis was open in the end zone.
Okay. And then Kadarius Toney would have been a rushing touchdown if y'all saw that play.
Did you not mention Christian McCaffrey?
McCaffrey, what was it?
Debo had a 1-yard rushing touchdown. Jordan Mason had a 2-yard rushing touchdown after a 70-yard run by McCaffrey.
Well, McCaffrey was tired.
He had such a great game, but yeah, he got down to the 2-yard line on the first play of the game, and they took him out 70-yard run, and Mason came in and cleaned up. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll go through all of the games, including the NFC South showdown in Atlanta. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today. It was a big game, and it was a really dramatic game, too. Tampa Bay 29, Atlanta 25. Baker Mayfield comes through with 24 points. Heath, what's our believe it or not for Tampa Bay and Atlanta?
Are we doing these for the fantasy playoffs, or we're not yet to look to next year, or where are you at on these, Adam?
I would say 80% should be fantasy playoffs.
Drake London and Kyle Pitts are starts in the fantasy playoffs.
What's their schedule, Dave? Where and where?
At Carolina,
Nope.
Indianapolis, at Chicago.
So 1 game yes and 2 no.
I'm there with Drake London, especially if it's a 3-receiver league,
Only
2
home.
wide receiver and 1 flex league, full PPR. I'm there.
Maybe it's the matchups. I mean, but he doesn't.
No,
but
it's not the matchups.
Chicago's
It's home road.
no road. Chicago's not a good matchup, and neither is Carolina, and they're both on the road. So it's
Shocking.
Yeah.
Funny how that works, I guess.
So we got like Dave sort of believes it on London. Jamie's not really feeling it.
No. I am in one game. He's going to be a top 10 receiver at home.
How about Pitts though? How are we feeling about Pitts? It's 2 good games.
One catch. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not ready to trust Pitts just because he's 9 PPR points 2 weeks ago, and then he has a touchdown this week. Do you know that?
Wait. 9 is not bad at all. 9's fine.
For Kyle Pitts, it's amazing. Both these teams punted on 4 consecutive possessions in the game. And they still somehow scored as many points as they did.
They had 8 straight punts together?
No, it wasn't in success. It might have actually been.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see.
So, like, there were 2 possessions in the first half for Tampa Bay. They punted. Their first 2 possessions of the third quarter, they punted. Right. All of the Falcons' possessions in the third quarter ended in punts. So, yeah, I guess you're right. 8 consecutive plays.
Wow.
Nah, not quite 8 because, no, it's
8 consecutive plays?
I got it's fine. We got it. All right, on the other side of the ball.
That was fascinating.
There's a lot of terrible defense is what I'm saying.
Don't really have anything else. Rashad, I think we know what to do with our Bucks. Well, I thought Mayfield deserves a high 5.
Hey, man, listen, with quarterback play being what it is right now, Mayfield might be your best chance to win a fantasy championship in some leagues.
Oh, man, that hurt my ears.
Hope not. All right, let's go to our next game. And that would be.
By the way, Heath, because of Jacqueline's decision, we were tracking Jake Browning versus Baker Mayfield the entire day.
I was too.
And then she was playing against Leger Duzabol, who was in the office today, and Leger was like, you started Mayfield over Browning, laughing the whole time, and then by the way, yeah, Mayfield helped her win.
I think Browning outscored him.
Browning
he did,
but still
by
Mayfield
4 points.
He did.
They were both really good.
That's why I said I hope they both score you 20, so you don't, and they did. They both scored her 20, so it was fine.
Chicago 28, Detroit 13. Chicago had the ball for a lot. 33 minutes and 19 seconds here. What's our believe it or not for this game?
We talked about the Bears running backs. We talked about the Lions running backs. How many the Lions don't have any more outdoor games left, so Jared Goff's just a top 10 quarterback rest of season?
Next week's gonna be tough. Broncos in their building. Jared Goff looks lost right now. And
the offensive line's
a travesty. It is not doing him any favors. He's very turnover prone. I don't know. He's not in my top 12 this week. I'd rather play Russ.
That'd be a don't believe it.
Yeah, hard to believe it. He's going to see 3 pretty good defenses in a row: Denver, Minnesota, Dallas.
He's just been so good indoors, though.
I think when you look at the Green Bay game, right, think about the Thanksgiving game against Green Bay and all those fumbles, kind of got lucky to score the 22.2 last week at New Orleans. It's 20 points.
And see, that's how I look at it different. Like if you have a bunch of fumbles and you still score 22.2, you should have scored a lot more.
He's just not playing that well right now, but he could turn it around. I mean, there's no reason why he can't. He's not a bad player.
There were also drops by St. Brown in the game and stuff like that. Do you want to know how many punts in a row the Lions had?
St. Brown, 2 worst games of the season consecutively here. And this was really bad. 3 catches for 21 yards. You just don't expect that.
No.
Yeah. All right.
And yet he will still be a wide receiver 1 next week.
Baltimore 37 and the Rams 31 in overtime. With the Ravens DST saved you with that punt return there. But what do we have for this one?
Odell Beckham is the Ravens' #1 wide receiver and a must-start wide receiver for fantasy.
Not going to believe all of that. I don't think he's their #1 wide receiver, and I don't know if he's a must-start. I'm going to point to Lamar's pass attempts again, 43. And that helped Odell and Zay Flowers get 10 targets each. How often is that going to happen?
I mean, I think by necessity to a certain extent, like Lamar's back in the MVP race again. And so I think it's just all on him, so whether it's going to be a game where he's throwing the ball a lot, running the ball a lot, doing what he did today, where it's, so 43 attempts and 11 carries, so 50 some odd times where he's making something happen. That's what you should expect. So I think both his receivers, his top 2 guys, and look, Nelson Aguilar, I don't know how he targets yet. I know 1.85 catches.
5 targets.
He's going to be part of this, unfortunately. And Isaiah likely is going to have a chance to make some plays. So, yeah, I think, you got to be you want to have pieces of this offense. I just don't think you want to overrate the pieces of this offense. So to me, Flowers is still the best receiver and probably receiving threat.
They both had 10 targets, I think, right? All right.
Yeah.
He's 60% rostered, so that's a guy who's definitely a waiver wire highlight. Beckham and Likely are both right around 60%. For the Rams, it's cool. Anybody interested in Demarcus Robinson? It's 2 good games in a row for him. 2 games with
He's actually looked fast. It's just how many times have we seen Demarcus Robinson look good, and then the very next week he's totally lays an egg.
Well, if there's a week to trust him, it's next week.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Against Washington.
Yeah.
And we much overlooked revenge game, Demarcus Robinson against the Ravens.
Ooh.
And Beckham. I mean, Beckham even talked about it. It was a big game for Beckham. All right, Cincinnati 34, Indianapolis 14.
If you stumbled into the playoffs streaming Gardner Minshew, it's enough of that nonsense.
Believe it.
But what about the situations that we're going to be dealing with next week where Herbert may be done and Stroud may not play and Geno Smith in this dream matchup? Like, are you starting Drew Lock or Gardner Minshew? I can tell you who I have ranked higher. But Drew Lock or Gardner Minshew, like who you trust? You know what I mean? Like we're in some bad spots here at quarterback play, certainly in Superflex and 2 QB leagues. So Minshew may not be horrible.
You have Jake Browning ahead of Minshew, though, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Who do the Seahawks get? Because the Minshew gets the Steelers.
Philadelphia at home.
Oh, Philly. Yeah, I'd start Lock, I think, if it's Lock.
Me too.
Yeah.
So I think that answers it as an affirmative. If we're starting Drew Lock over him, then we're done with it.
All right. Anything? Let's see. Okay, so let's talk about the Bengals, right? So Jamar Chase with a bad game, Mixon with a very good game. Chase Brown had a long touchdown catch. Higgins had 72 yards, I think. But most of it on one play.
46-yard gain.
I guess on 2 play. Really split it evenly, I guess. But I guess specifically Chase, right? 3 catches for 29 yards on 4 targets after he had 12 targets and 149 yards and a touchdown. What the heck are we supposed to do with Jamar Chase?
You start him.
Yeah.
You're going to start him against Minnesota.
They're good. They're not bad.
I agree.
Not-
There's going to be a total letdown game for Browning at some point. I don't know if Minnesota's going to be it. I doubt that Pittsburgh would be it.
That's a revenge game for Browning.
Yeah, next week
Stars crew in Minnesota.
at Kansas City in week 17. I mean,
A,
the wheels will
a
come
former
off
member
of
of the-
because there's so many fluky plays that he's made.
A former member of the Vikings organization said that they wanted to make him their backup quarterback, but he did not do well in the preseason.
You want to check his air yards per attempt, but I still think we're talking about a guy who barely throws the ball downfield and has gotten away with it in Jake Browning.
Those 2 best
do you
plays
think it
were
was?
screen passes.
I'm going to guess his ADOT or his air yards per pass attempt was 5-ish.
He also has Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Joe Mixon, and now Chase Brown is doing fun things too. Like, he's got pretty good guys to just dump the ball off to and see what they can do with it.
Sure. So, like, if you're going to distribute, you'd want to distribute to those guys compared to, receivers on a terrible team.
You wouldn't
It's like prior to the last few weeks, what people were saying about Brock Purdy. Just put the ball in the playmaker's hands.
Remember what his ADOT was last week?
It was what? No.
It was 4.5. You know what his ADOT is this week?
I forgot about the Higgins plays. So it's probably like 7.
It's 4.5.
Oh my God. It's hard to be successful with that. I mean, and that's not good for Chase, but you could it could help in PPR, but it's kind of gimmicky. All right.
I'm telling you, eventually the wheels are going to fall off. I don't know if I'm ready to say it's going to be next week.
You're not sitting Jamar Chase unless you have a loaded team.
Well, I get it. A lot of people will have a loaded team at this point, but I get it. Cleveland 31, Jacksonville 21.
You should sit your Jags against the Ravens in the first week of the playoffs.
No. Well,
Which Jags?
Yeah.
All of them?
Which one are you starting?
I'm starting ETN without hesitation, and at this point, I'm starting Evan Ingram without hesitation.
Yeah,
So,
Ingram is the first name that came to mind.
Seven quarters without Christian Kirk on the field, and he's been an absolute monster.
It's a great point. Honestly, Trevor Lawrence is making incredible throws. I don't know. He's doing enough.
Stafford just carved them up too.
Kyle Hamilton is a big deal losing him, I think. So
Yeah.
I'm trying. Maybe I'm talking myself into it. they're not outright sits for me.
It was a tale of two games for Trevor Lawrence for sure because he made some awful.
Adam, I'll say
throws.
this in the podcast league playoffs, you can start Lawrence.
Thanks, buddy. Considering I'm not making him, but
you missed it. Sorry.
Yeah, you got me there. Ridley though. Ridley, I feels like the sit if I was going to sit one of them. Other than of the big three, of the big four,
Definitely.
right? Yeah,
He's the lowest of them, but I mean, again, Kupp and Nakua just had big games. DeMarcus Robinson just had a big game against the secondary, so hopefully Ridley can do something. I think he's still a starter in 3 leagues.
yeah. Okay, and then
Heath, when you said it was a tale of two games for Trevor Lawrence, what does that mean?
I mean, he had a number of throws downfield that were bad. Like he didn't. Adam said he made some great throws, and he did make some great throws, but he made some terrible decisions and throws in this game also.
yeah, one of his interceptions up the right sideline. I don't even know what that was. That was awful.
He made some great throws to the Browns.
That was a really accurate throw to the Browns.
I mean, he had 3 interceptions in the game, correct?
Yeah,
He did.
But
All
look,
right.
with a third string left tackle and a bad ankle, he performed much better than I anticipated.
So I think it was a fourth stringer, right? They lost their left tackle
Oh,
again.
yeah.
He
They
threw
did, yes.
50 passes today.
Yeah.
50 passes, 257 yards. Horrible quarterback rating, but as Adam has told us, the interceptions play a big role into that number.
Well, and the 5.5 yards per attempt.
The
What
guard
was
that
he-
they acquired at the trade deadline started at left tackle, Ezra Cleveland, and he left.
Played
with
left
them.
tackle in college. What were they doing on the 2-point conversion at the end of the game?
Oh, when they were down by 4.
They're down by
and-
4. They kicked the point, they cut it to 3, and then they can't go for. I mean, I get you're trying to win, but that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you go for 2, it's actually worth 4. So I think that's what they were going for. There.
Well, I guess so.
All right, next game. New Orleans 28, Carolina 6, and another big time of possession discrepancy here. Carolina had the ball for almost 10 more minutes than the Saints. This is a weird game, clunky game. What do you got there?
Yeah, I don't know that I have a whole lot.
Let's do a Chubbard one because he had over 20 carries, 23 carries, 87 yards, 2 catches.
Miles Sanders had the only good run in the game, I think.
Yeah, only good one of his season.
I mean, he's just I don't have anybody better flex. I don't know if there's anything that he's going to do on a week-to-week basis that's really going to change my mind. He's somewhere in that 25 to 32 range, and if you don't have somebody you like better, you start him.
It's 3 games in a row with 19 or more touches for Chuba Hubbard. Is that not appealing?
He's their guy, and I think he can qualify as a low-end RB2 when the matchup's right. I don't believe that Miles Sanders is taking a huge chunk of work away. Sanders had a nice run, and then they gave him some goal line carries after that nice run, and he got slammed. They like Chuba Hubbard. Like the snaps say it, the workload says it. He's 77% of the snaps, almost every third down snap.
He's not going to score a touchdown next week.
Not going to. He's facing the Falcons.
Certainly not.
Adam Thielen's great.
He's absolutely going to be.
I don't want
guy
to talk about Adam
that
Thielen.
scores on the Falcons.
You don't want to talk about Adam Thielen?
Not at all.
He's magic 8-ball material at this point. Oh man. All right.
No, if the Magic 8-Ball's not been smashed into a million pieces by a hammer, by you particularly today, I don't know. Like, get the hammer out.
I hate the magic 8-ball right
Smash
now.
it with your microphone.
I don't know
Oh,
why.
he was going to be good.
Yeah. 0 catches for Gabe Davis. You work really hard and you think work so hard to figure out these players, and it's like, this is what we get. We get this. All right, Jets 20, Texans 6.
We shouldn't have any more Breece Hall or Garrett Wilson questions. You should just start them every week.
Zach Wilson, I think every run play that was called, he just checked to a pass play and was like, F it. I don't care what happens. I'm just
He
going
pulled
to
a Flacco.
I'm just going to do what I want. And it was fun to watch. He played fairly well early in the game. But the best thing he did was, hey, Garrett Wilson, I'm back, baby. Let's go. Target. Hey, Breece Hall. Target. I mean, that's just, hey, let's go.
So the Jets are only 2 games out of the playoffs.
Isn't every team basically only 2 games out of the playoffs? I mean, it's
No.
Well, I
no,
mean, at this point, the Jets might get in, the Chiefs may not make it.
yeah. I mean,
that would be
it's
wild.
possible. But does that mean Aaron Rodgers is going to come back?
No.
I'd be shocked.
All right,
They're not
Minnesota
winning next week at Miami.
game of the week: Minnesota 3, Vegas 0.
Oh,
Josh
wow.
Dobbs got benched, by the way. I forgot to say that with in the news and notes.
That wasn't your lead story.
No,
Justin
was
Jefferson got murdered.
not the
Josh
biggest news in this game.
They're all pretty much losers in this game, right?
What about Ty Chandler? About Jordan Addison?
Did Madison come back in the game or no?
No,
No.
I don't think so.
Man, he
He
was
did
having
not.
such
He
a
did
good game,
not.
too.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, I'll do this one then.
Good, thank you.
Believe it or not, Ty Chandler is better than who are we talking about? We're comparing to Zeke. We said Zeke's going to be ahead of him, but
Zach Moss.
Ty Chandler is better than Zach Moss next week. Chandler at Cincinnati if Madison is out.
Don't believe it.
Don't believe it.
No, I don't believe it.
Okay. Believe it or not, Ty Chandler is a must add.
Believe it.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, any running back's a must add at this point that's going to get a starting job.
Well, maybe not Zamir White. I don't know how you feel about that. If Jacobs can't
That
go.
doesn't mean must start. It means must add. Different conversation.
All right. Okay. San Francisco 28, Seattle 16.
Zach Charbonnet is the best Seahawks running back rest of season.
Don't believe it. I thought Walker had some really nice runs.
I agree. He had some nice plays. Some of them were through the air. Did he get hurt at the end of the game?
I think he got shaken up a little bit on the long run. I didn't understand their usage, and I kind of thought he looked like he had a piano on his back. I didn't think Ken Walker looked all that great, but I didn't really understand what they were doing there. They ended up with a pretty similar amount of carries, one more for Charbonnet, but Walker had 4 catches and Charbonnet had 1. I haven't looked at the usage and all that. That might
I've got it.
be worth looking
Walker,
at.
58% of the snaps. Charbonnet, 40%. Charbonnet played 9 of 11 snaps on third downs and no snaps inside the 10. So don't know if there's a change at the goal line or not.
Well, their next 3 games are Philadelphia, Tennessee, and Pittsburgh. So how about this? Believe it or not, regardless of who the best one is, we don't
You're
want
not
to
gonna
start
start.
any Seahawks running back rest of
Oh,
season.
I would start him against Tennessee if Simmons is there.
Fair. That's fair. But the other 2, I wouldn't feel good about it.
Well, I mean, look, if he comes out of whoever comes out of the Philly game with better usage and then potentially dominates the Titans, we have no idea what with these injuries, what we're looking at. We get to week 16. And so even in a tough matchup, potentially, I'm probably still starting Walker as at least a flex or Charbonnet as at least a flex. I mean, I can't imagine the way they use these guys that wouldn't be the case.
Okay. Buffalo 20, Kansas City 17.
Travis Kelce is the only Chief you should start at New England.
That's assuming Pacheco's out.
I don't know if you want to start Pacheco against New England as good as their run defense is.
I would
If
start
Pacheco-
Pacheco against anybody.
Yeah.
right now.
I would too. And I think Mahomes is still very much in the starting conversation. But he might have cost some people some playoff berths, and that part stinks. So
Yeah, I think we should clarify that he did not cost anybody anything. He's got a bunch of guys doing a bunch of really poor work. Don't know where to line up. Can't catch the football. Can't hold on to it once they do catch the football.
Mhm.
Patrick Mahomes should have had a 30-point game today.
There goes my hero. That's
You said it either last Sunday or this week. He's the biggest bust in fantasy.
yeah.
That's not even close.
If I weren't superstitious, I would change Purdy and Mahomes in my Superflex league and make Purdy the quarterback and Mahomes the Superflex. Just I would do, but I'm too superstitious to rock.
You don't
the
think
boat.
he's the biggest bust?
Oh, I do. Heath.
I'd have to think about it, but he's got to be on the list.
No, I don't. I mean, I could do some actual research, but I think there are running backs who were taken in the first 2 rounds who have been much worse than Mahomes relative to where their draft pick.
Non-injury busts. Non-injury.
Like you can't have missed one game with injury, or you could have been a bust but also missed a game.
Not Nick Chubb.
Right, agreed.
But who's missed the game with injuries? Barkley. Mark Barkley missed a few games. Like if you think Barkley's been worse than Mahomes, I'll accept that. but I think Mahomes has been worse.
I wonder if Mahomes' ADP is higher than Barkley's, though.
Well, okay, if we're using CBS ADP, then I would agree Mahomes was definitely the biggest bust. Our ADP, third round, I don't think he was.
I think one of the whole arguments for taking Mahomes and why people wanted him in round 1 was because he would put up points that dwarfed other quarterbacks. Two games with 30 plus this year.
Well, he's also been well behind the other two guys he was drafted around in terms of Hurts and Allen.
Yeah. But
He's definitely the biggest bust at quarterback.
I mean, coming into the week, he was averaging fewer fantasy points per game than Justin Herbert.
What is that? What is that? A phone number? 855. Come on now, Heath. Well, he wasn't going to the third round in any real leagues. Like, he was just going to the third round in analyst leagues.
Why isn't it?
I cannot believe that they are one game up on the Broncos.
Isn't that crazy?
It's nuts.
They have to play a road playoff game. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, certainly his receivers did not help him today. There's no question about that. Okay.
Can you imagine if Denver beats Detroit and they lose to the Patriots? They're tied.
I really cannot imagine that.
Are you going to start
but still.
Jamar Chase next week or Rashee Rice?
What
do you mean, Chase? For sure.
Yeah, Chase. But
Rashee Rice is on fire, dude. He's got 7 or more catches in 3 straight games.
It's close. It's close.
He's him. He is him.
Yes, he is.
That's a thing.
Him holds onto the ball.
Whatever. He's still him right now.
Who he?
Denver 24 and the Chargers 7. Javonte scored. Hooray.
A rushing touchdown for a Broncos running back. Fantastic. And like Cortland Sutton, 3 catches, 62 yards. And of course, he scored every time he scores a touchdown. I just see Chris Towers' face getting angry about him scoring another touchdown.
So I asked Dave this. So Chris was really making the case for Chris Godwin over Cortland Sutton?
I don't remember that specifically. I just know that. Was he?
Well, he and I got pretty heated. There's like the first time all year we've gotten really heated about it.
Why?
Okay, I understood where he was coming from.
But Chris Godwin stinks.
That all the things that everything Cortland Sutton was doing was so lucky. He's like, he's just going to write a whole article about it in the offseason about how lucky and all the regression that Cortland Sutton has. And why are we buying into this?
I wrote the same thing. Yeah, it's true.
But I was lucky. Why are you like dying on the Chris Godwin hill? Chris Godwin's been so uninvolved in this and that. Like I understand what he's saying about Sutton. It is ridiculous.
Right, but you got to have somebody better on the other side to be comparing him to. Like,
yeah. But anyway, do we just keep starting Sutton or what?
Yes.
Do you want touchdowns?
Have you seen Detroit play defense?
Oh, I love it. Yeah. But then again, he just faced the Chargers, and he had how many targets did he have in this game?
He had a 40-some-odd yard touchdown that went 60-some-odd yards in the air.
He had 4 targets. I had 46-yard touchdown catch. Yeah. Eckler, let's talk about this. Was a big story coming in, so we'll finish the show on this, right?
Always beats up Denver.
Wasn't really a huge split, and he had a great game. He had 100 yards, 5 catches, and a touchdown. So
he's back.
You got to wonder where they're at right now with Herbert losing.
Is he back?
Maybe losing Herbert for the season.
Well, I think
which hand is the broken finger on?
Throwing hand, right?
He's just throwing hand.
Then it's over.
Well, if it's not manageable, but you would think it's over. Like, why would they play him at this point? If I'm the Chargers, I'm firing Brandon Staley and I'm sitting Justin Herbert for the rest of the season.
Yeah,
firing him now.
Yes,
or after the season.
Now.
All right. Let Kellen Moore see what he
If I'm the Chargers, I would have fired him last year.
Well,
because he lost in the playoffs.
Yeah.
You know there are 6 teams tied at 7 and 6 in the AFC.
Yeah, it's insane. That's why the Jets aren't making the playoffs. They just have too many teams to jump. But all right, seriously on Eckler, I mean, are we feeling like he's back? Because I did mention this last week. His schedule going forward, beginning with this week, is outstanding. He took advantage of one good matchup. Are we thinking he's top 12 guy?
Yes,
must start all the way back.
Who am I, Jamie?
Me watching the Eagles play.
Is that the fake punt?
Yeah.
What a face. Oh, I can't wait to screen grab that later.
All right. Oh, we also found out today on the live stream that Chris's wife thinks that Tony Shalhoub is like very handsome. She's a big crush on Tony.
I don't know who Tony Shalhoub is.
You know who Tony Shalhoub is. You watch Mrs. Maisel?
Yes.
Her dad.
Oh, fantastic show, by the way.
Monk.
Spectacular show.
He's Monk. Yeah.
Monk, yes.
Yeah.
Great.
Also,
show.
the guy who gets his head blown off in Men in Black.
Does he? All right, guys. Thank you. Great show. Appreciate
You don't
it.
know that scene in Men in Black?
I'm not really a Men in Black guy.
As much of a Tony Shalhoub fan as you are, that might be his greatest scene in movie history.
Well, you haven't seen the Monk movie, so
I haven't seen Monk.
oh,
Oh.
it's just such an omission from your catalog.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. Have a great day, everybody. Great evening. We'll talk to you on Beyond the Box Score on Monday. See you
Doesn't like
later.
Star Wars, but he likes Monk.